The first thing I did after becoming an orphan was to gather formula and diapers because I adopted a human baby. What I didn't expect was that this baby would end up being the reincarnated human empress. In her past life, she fought across the world, enduring countless life and death trials. She killed many powerful beings from other races and ultimately died of exhaustion at the hands of the insect queen mother from space. Now, she has reincarnated at the beginning of the apocalypse 50 years ago, but as a powerless baby. Just as I arrived, I was attacked by orphans. When I opened my eyes again, I discovered I had become a bloodthirsty monster, a zombie. Yet I still retained my human consciousness. Every day, I ate frozen meat from the fridge to quell my hunger. Just as I was about to get food as usual, I noticed a baby about 5 or 6 months old in a room. I saw many toys and children's clothes around the house. On the nightstand, there was spoiled milk, and the blood in the living room seemed to indicate that the child's parents had probably suffered an accident. Shui, for a moment, was on the verge of tears. She couldn't believe that after so long she had reincarnated, but instead of being welcomed by joyful parents, she was attacked by a bloodthirsty zombie. In her past life, with just a flick of her finger, she could destroy everything, but now she was a powerless baby, unable even to lift a finger. She hadn't eaten for a long time, and the fear she felt at that moment made her faint from sheer terror and hunger. I looked at the little one who neither cried nor made a sound. Do I look so terrifying? Did I scare you to death? I quickly reached out to check if she was still breathing. Upon realizing she was, I calmed down. She was so hungry that she couldn't even cry. I felt an inexplicable sense of pity in my heart. In a way, this baby and I were similar. We both arrived in this strange world without knowing how. On top of that, we both had the misfortune of encountering the apocalypse and the orphans. That's why I decided to raise this baby. At least in this desolate apocalypse, I would finally have some company. Even though I had already become an orphan due to the virus, I never thought I would turn into a bloodthirsty monster. Realizing this, I discovered that the owner of this house had been dead for at least 2 days. This little one hadn't eaten in a long time. I needed to get some milk first. This baby, about 7 or 8 months old, was too small. Other foods were indigestible. Only formula would work. The formula container on the nightstand was already empty. I had no choice but to go out and find more. I left the room, locked the door tightly, and moved the heavy sofa in the living room to block the entrance completely. Then I went to the kitchen, but there was no food. It made sense. The zombie plague had been going on for a month, so all the food must have been gone. Maybe this child's parents had gone out in search of food, which led to their misfortune. With no other options, I had to go to the upper floors. I climbed to the 5th floor and used a lever to break the lock and open a security door. Upon entering the room, the scene left me frozen in place. Inside, there was a zombie woman. Her white dress was completely stained with blood. Hearing the noise, she rushed toward the door, but upon seeing that another of her kind was standing outside, she reluctantly withdrew. As I stepped inside, I saw the floor covered in blood and a human corpse about 1.5 meters tall. Clearly, after the zombie outbreak, the housewife had turned into a zombie, and the child she had loved the most in life had ended up being devoured. I stood there, immersed in deep silence. I thought of the little one I had seen earlier. If the baby hadn't been locked in the bedroom, she would likely have met the same fate. Perhaps it was a stroke of luck amid the disaster. Although the child was born into this apocalypse, at least she encountered a zombie like me, one that doesn't eat humans. I then went to the kitchen and finally found 2 unopened cans of formula. I also found raw meat that hadn't yet decomposed. The owner of the house had likely turned into a zombie at the beginning of the apocalypse, so the food remained intact. I packed everything into my backpack, glanced at the zombie still wandering near the door, and after a brief moment of silence, I approached from behind. With the lever in hand, I struck its skull in a single blow, freeing it completely. Shui, who had fainted, suddenly smelled a sweet, delicious aroma filling her mouth. The strong scent of milk left her momentarily entranced. Meanwhile, her starving body, which hadn't felt this sweetness in a long time, instinctively began to suck. slowly regaining a bit of energy. Finally, Shui managed to open her eyes with difficulty. She was surprised to discover that she hadn't died at the hands of a zombie. Even more shocking was that the fierce zombie was feeding her with a spoon. Am I dreaming, or am I so hungry that I'm hallucinating? She looked in disbelief at the zombie in front of her, who seemed like some kind of nanny. In her past life's memories, orphans were all mindless creatures that only knew bloodlust. After the orphan crisis, many of her friends and comrades had died at their hands. Even she had to eliminate several companions who had been bitten and lost their sanity. That's why, when she saw an orphan before her, Shui knew that her fate was already sealed. Those bloodthirsty monsters without humanity would not spare her just because she was a baby. But she did not expect that, instead of devouring her, the orphan was even feeding her. Could it be that this orphan plans to raise me only to devour me later? While feeding the baby, I saw that the little one opened her eyes again, which made me feel a little more at ease. When she finished the formula, I noticed that the little one continued looking at me with her bright eyes. She clearly had not eaten enough. Seriously, can this small body drink so much? I said something without thinking, but then I remembered that I am now a zombie and cannot speak. I could only emit some incomprehensible grunts. That scared Jiru Shui. This is bad. This zombie surely wants me to get full only to devour me later. Shui, who had just relaxed, tensed up again upon hearing the zombie's grunt. Just as she prepared to be devoured, she noticed that the zombie turned away and left. Shortly after, Irui heard a mixing sound. A little later, I returned with a new bowl of formula. Ui was surprised. She had never experienced anything so strange before. Although there was still some fear and concern in her heart, her body instinctively continued sucking. I had to prepare 3 bowls of formula before she was finally satisfied. Looking at the milk stains at the corner of her mouth, I could feel there was still a certain unsatisfied desire in her eyes. This little one really can eat a lot. Even though I have never married or raised a child, from what I know, such a small baby should not be eating this much. It seems that if I want to adopt this little one, the pressure in the future will be much greater. Now I understand why, in my past life, so many companions worked so hard just to earn money to buy formula. Raising a child really isn't easy. But at least now we are in the apocalypse, and I can go anywhere to get things without paying. I am not worried about not having enough financial power. It seems that when I go out to look for supplies, I should bring more formula. This little one will probably eat more and more. Besides, formula is usually sealed, so it can be stored for a long time. After eating and drinking, Irusu lay comfortably in the crib with a satisfied expression. After going hungry for so long, finally drinking milk was no different from a precious elixir. Irui looked at me curiously. It was the first time she had seen something so strange. The orphan, who should have been a bloodthirsty creature, devouring flesh everywhere, had curiously repressed its bloodthirsty impulse. Not throwing itself at her to devour her immediately was already surprising, but beyond that, it was preparing formula and even feeding her with a spoon. This is completely absurd. Ui, in her past life, had experienced the apocalypse from beginning to end and managed to survive until the very last moment. She had faced countless dangers and overcome life and death trials to become an incomparable empress. What kind of orphan have I never seen before? I could even say that the number of orphans that have died at my hands is countless. Although these orphans continue evolving over time and gradually develop intelligence, that cannot happen now. At least the orphan in front of me has very low energy. Clearly, it is a newly transformed low-level orphan, a first-level orphan. This kind of zombie is everywhere. They are those who transform after being infected by the orphan virus. And this level of orphan is definitely incapable of developing intelligence. They are just a group of bloodthirsty beasts following their instincts. Irui looked at this orphan in front of her and could not understand what was happening. But as an incomparable empress, she had already gone through all kinds of life and death crises. So even when facing an orphan, she did not panic. In any case, for some reason, at least for now, this orphan had no intention of devouring her, so there was no reason to worry too much. Even if the orphan really wanted to attack her, at least she had filled her stomach. Before dying, She would at least not die of hunger in the crib. That was not a bad way to go. Thinking about all this, Irui began to feel sleepy. After several days of hunger and fear, her nerves had been extremely tense. Now, after eating, she finally relaxed. Irusu's eyes slowly closed. She could no longer avoid falling into a deep sleep. I looked at the adorable baby I had personally fed, saving her young life. Without knowing why, I felt a sense of accomplishment. Seeing the baby lying peacefully in the crib, with an expression of calm and beauty, I felt a warm sensation in my heart. From now on, in this city devastated by orphans, I will no longer be alone. Little one, we are companions in misfortune. We both arrived in this strange world and faced the orphan crisis. Don't worry, I will take good care of you. Irusu slept deeply. She did not even know that. Even though there was a bloodthirsty orphan near her, she was still safe. Of blood by your side slept so peacefully, not even knowing how long you had slept, only feeling that now you were floating in the air. It so happens that the orphan had risen. The successive actions of this orphan left Irusu even more confused, but at that moment, they were more concerned with knowing where he was taking them. I held the baby in my arms and left the room. The place where I had fallen after the orphan's explosion was an old neighborhood. The apartment building had 7 floors and no elevator, so I decided to move to the 7th floor. The night before, I had already eliminated all the remaining orphans in the corridor. Upon reaching the 7th floor, I placed Ui in the dormitory I had already prepared. This is the top floor. It offers great protection against the spread of odors and sounds. At least for now, it is a safe place to live. Faced with this baby, I truly tried to recover what had been of me as a human. So I decided to make this house a home for her and for myself. In the future, I must also start recovering my human life. The room, which was full of dust, I had already cleaned before. The most important thing is that in this room, I found many baby clothes, diapers, bottles, toys, and children's books. The owner of this room had probably also had children. It is very likely that after the orphan's explosion, the entire family had fled in a hurry. I stopped in front of the window and looked outside, then stretched slowly. I don't know if it was because of the baby, but even looking at this destroyed world through the window, I felt my heart fill with motivation and hope. Then I took a diaper and prepared to change Ui, absorbent, dry without getting wet. Disposable diapers are truly one of humanity's great inventions. Ui suddenly felt her scalp tingle. She was already used to being fed by zombies, but now it so happened that they were also changing her diaper. This was completely different from the basic instinct of feeding her. A baby diaper is a unique human invention. It is not something one can do merely by instinct. Suddenly, a surprising thought arose in Irui's mind. Could this zombie be retaining human consciousness? Immediately, she remembered her first encounter with this zombie. Other zombies only knew how to bang on doors or perhaps scratch themselves with their fingers. But this zombie knew how to open the door. Since the dormitory was locked, he had used a lever to unlock it. Before, Ushu, due to extreme hunger and fear, had not noticed this. But now, recalling it, she realized something was not right. When had a zombie ever used a lever? Then, this zombie not only did not devour her, but also used a bottle to prepare formula and fed her. That was completely logical. Today, he even changed her diaper. Could there be anything more absurd than that? At that moment, Irui felt deeply moved, as if she had discovered a new world. But wait a moment. This zombie in front of me does not seem to be a woman. The Empress had been replaced by a man. Irusu opened her eyes in surprise, finally reacting and realizing that she had been observed naked. She felt extremely agitated. One must remember that in her past life, she had never even touched a man's hand. Even in the midst of the apocalypse, Irui had never had close contact with the opposite sex. And now, she could not believe it. Her purity had been destroyed by a diaper. Irusu felt completely desolate. She could not believe that after reincarnating, all kinds of things were happening to her. This zombie is really treating me as if I were his daughter. Thinking about this, her heart skipped a beat, and a tragic story involuntarily emerged in her mind. Perhaps this zombie, before the apocalypse, had a daughter he loved dearly. But in the apocalypse, Human life became insignificant in the face of the wave of bloodthirsty orphans. Humans almost no longer existed, especially at the beginning of the zombie explosion. For ordinary humans living in cities, there was no hope of survival. Probably this zombie's daughter had already died after the arrival of the apocalypse, but he still thought of his daughter, that love which goes beyond life and death. That love which goes beyond life and death made this zombie, who should be bloodthirsty, treat me as his daughter. That love, which goes beyond life and death, made this zombie, who should be bloodthirsty, treat me as his daughter. And everything he did for me, actually what he had done for his daughter. Even though he had turned into a zombie, he still could not abandon the love for his daughter. Irusu felt a mixture of emotions. Irui felt a mixture of emotions and also felt pity for him. Imagine a human who had a happy family. Imagine a human who had a happy family and suddenly faces the apocalypse. Everything he knew and loved completely changed. He himself became a bloodthirsty zombie and lost his dearest family. The saddest thing is that after losing everything, he retained his human consciousness, although he was already dead. He continued suffering and living. He went on living alone in that destroyed city, which no longer had a single intact piece of land. He wandered among the orphans without a true companion to relate to. Due to his human consciousness, he could not live like the other zombies, leading a life of blind slaughter and chaos. But having turned into a zombie, he could no longer integrate into human society either. He could only see his former companions pointing their weapons at him, their eyes filled with contempt and hatred. Neither the zombies nor the humans had a place to belong. The entire city was engulfed in darkness. Before leaving, I blocked the entrance to the stairs on the 7th floor. Besides, the zombies in this building had already been completely eliminated. The zombies outside generally don't climb stairs without reason. The little one is still very young and won't make loud noises in the room. But what I do is, on one hand, to avoid the zombies, and on the other, to avoid the humans. Since I became a zombie, I have lived in the store for a month. Through the windows, I have seen many tragedies after the apocalypse collapsed. At first, in the face of the crisis, most people still maintained some level of calm and kindness. But as the deaths increased and food became scarce, the hidden darkness in human nature began to manifest. Those who were kinder and more willing to help mostly died early on at the hands of the zombies. I remember that in the first days after the collapse of the apocalypse, the cries of women were often heard in the streets. Just by hearing that sound, one already knew what had happened. After half a month, the city began to run out of water, electricity, and some even started bartering with meat just to get a little food. Some even pushed their companions toward the zombies just to escape alone. And this became common in the apocalypse. I saw with my own eyes that due to the lack of food, some survivors were already desperate with hunger. They did not dare face the bloodthirsty zombies, but they raised their knives against their own companions. Even after turning into zombies, I could still control my desire to hunt humans. But some still alive began to kill each other and devour their companions. These people had already lost the most basic essence of humanity. They didn't even deserve to be called human. They didn't even spare children. If those zombies find the little one, the consequences would be unthinkable. For a simple meal, they would do anything. Shortly after, I filled a large mountaineering backpack with food. What remained, I carried in my arms. If any survivor had night vision, they would see a very strange scene in the dark and silent street. A bloodthirsty zombie carrying a large amount of infant formula and walking silently. Meanwhile, when Jusu woke up, he found the room empty. Where did my zombie dad go during the night? I feel like urinating. Well, at least I have diapers. This invent really genius. Just then, Ju-Hui, through the window that wasn't completely closed, saw the blood moon in the sky. At that moment, it looked extremely strange. The blood moon. Today is the night of the blood moon. It seems that the era of global evolution is about to begin. Looking at the blood moon above my head, I felt somewhat disoriented. I went to a corner, opened the can of formula, and saw that it was still white. I sighed in relief. I thought my eyes had gotten sick and turned red. My eyes are normal, but that means the moon really has turned blood red. I paid no further attention to the changes in the sky. I spent the entire night frantically transporting formula, baby bottles, diapers, everything a baby needs. I also brought a variety of snacks and children's toys. I didn't even forget the children's books. Even though we are in the apocalypse, I still need to teach the little one to read and speak. Jusu looked at the 2013 university entrance exam simulation book I had brought and suddenly felt a chill down my spine. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's not even a year old yet. And I'm already making him solve university entrance exams. Isn't that a little too rushed? Besides, we are at the end of the world, and still, exams. It didn't take long for the nearly 100 square meter room to be completely packed. At that moment, I felt a strange heat in my body. I need to remember that I am a zombie. My blood stopped circulating long ago and has turned into a thick, dark brown liquid. But then I started feeling an itch in my brain, as if my head was about to explode. I crouched in the corner, holding my head, my body trembling uncontrollably. I didn't know what was happening to me. Could it be that my human experience card has expired? Am I going to turn into one of those zombies that only know how to drink blow? I fought so hard to regain my life, to find new hope and a new purpose, and finally, in this destroyed world, I found someone to live with. I won't give up so easily. Even though I don't know what is happening to me or what I will become, I need to stay conscious. The black veins on my body started to fade, turning into a bluish hue. At the same time, the horrible wound on my shoulder, which had been there for a month, was now completely dry and cracked. It was dirty and disgusting, but somehow it was beginning to heal slowly. Although it hadn't returned to its original form, at least it no longer looked as grotesque and terrifying as before. My nails also began to change, and those sharp, loose teeth became slightly more aligned. Meanwhile, on this dark night, the roars of zombies suddenly began to echo. Many zombies under the light of the moon were going through the same transformation as me. Their bodies began to tremble. Some survivors, under the red glow of the moon, started feeling heat within their bodies. Without realizing it, they began to experience some changes. In the dormitory, Yuch Shui was also being bathed in the red moonlight. Outside, her small body began to tremble slightly. Jushu felt an intense heat spreading throughout her body. I don't know how much time passed, but when I woke up again, I realized I was lying in the street. I moved my body a little and noticed it had become more agile. My strength had also increased enormously. Looking at the zombies around me, I saw that they had also undergone a remarkable change. Those disgusting and decayed zombies, after this night, looked slightly more human. It seems that after the blood moon, the monotonous life began to change a little. Somehow, I ended up in this strange world, living each day aimlessly. But now, finally, something is changing. Repetitive life becomes boring over time. Just when I was about to take the supplies home as I passed by a zombie, I suddenly felt a strange sensation in my heart. It seemed that somehow there was a connection. It can't be. After so much time alone, this isn't possible. But soon I realized that this unique connection wasn't because I had strange feelings for that zombie. Instead, I felt that countless threads were emerging in my mind, connecting me to that zombie. They seemed like unconscious puppets, as if their heads were empty, and I seemed to have a special ability. I could transfer my thoughts through these invisible threads, as if I were controlling a puppet with strings. I quickly began to test my hypothesis. Concentrating, I started to feel that the connection with the zombie in front of me was strengthening. In no time, the zombie that had been staggering suddenly stopped, straightened up, raised its hands, and in the middle of the ruined street, began doing chest expansion exercises. I called this strange ability corpse control. It seems that I also have the presence of a great emperor. I didn't stop controlling the zombies. They danced, played basketball, and even rapped. The only problem was that these zombies couldn't speak. Besides, for now, I could only control 2 zombies at the same time, and if they were too far away, I couldn't give precise orders. Suddenly, I remembered that the little one was at home. so I quickly controlled zombies 1 and 2 and ordered them to collect the supplies I had gathered earlier. I immediately headed for the neighborhood. Meanwhile, in the 7th floor dormitory, Irui finally awakened from her long sleep after the night of the red moon. She woke up with extraordinary abilities, mental control. With just a thought, she could control objects, fly through the air, move things from a distance, etc. It was a completely out-of-the-ordinary ability. What surprised Irui the most was that she not only awakened her mental control ability, but also regained the extraordinary powers of her past life, time control. After several experiments and a long period of analyzing cases in her past life, someone had already proposed that the awakening of extraordinary abilities could be closely related to the human soul. Different souls would have different extraordinary powers, and Irui felt incredibly excited. This time, she was much stronger than in her past life. After all, besides her original foundation, she now possessed the ability to control minds. Now she considered herself a dual-talented person. In her past life, with only time control, she successfully survived the apocalypse, grew stronger, and the terrifying power of time granted her the ability to dominate the entire battlefield. She could make the battlefield stop, speed up or slow down the flow of time around her or her opponents. This talent was almost a divine power. It was thanks to this extraordinary power that Irui finally became an empress. And in this life, she not only had time control, but also mental control. At that moment, Irui heard some noises outside the room. Had her zombie father returned? While lying in bed, she felt growing curiosity in her heart. Could that low-level zombie with human consciousness be able to evolve after the red moon? Would he be able to evolve successfully, or would he be like humans? Would he be capable of awakening extraordinary powers like humans? Would he be able to awaken supernatural abilities? Meanwhile, I quickly reached the rooftop and saw that the cabinet I had left in the hallway was still in place, intact. Relieved, I sighed. This time when I left, I came across the blood moon. The most important thing is that I passed out. It's the first time since I arrived in this world that I feel some attachment. I ran quickly back to the room and saw that the little one on the bed was looking at me with open eyes. Although I had never had a romantic relationship before, this scene made me feel as if I were a father. A baby so calm and adorable in this apocalyptic world. He seems to have the power to purify everything. Little one, you've been without me for so long. You must be hungry. I went to the kitchen to prepare the powdered milk. While mixing the milk, Juhui also watched me. This zombie father realized that many changes had occurred in my body. Now, I seemed more human, but this change was not very evident. It was not the same as in Jusu's records. In Jirushi's memory, zombies started as simple first-level zombies after the emergence. From that red moon, everyone experienced strange changes. The zombies that evolved because of the red moon grew in size. Those who were previously 1.70 meters or 1.80 meters tall after the evolution reached heights of 2 or 3 meters. The dimensions of their muscles also grew in a terrifying manner. Their skin became extremely resistant, and their bones far surpassed those of common beings. These zombies, with their robust bodies, were much stronger than normal zombies. When they appeared on the battlefield, they were extremely difficult to defeat, as they possessed overwhelming strength. Because of this, zombies of this evolutionary line were generally called tank-type zombies by humans. It could be said that they were the nightmare. They could be said to be the nightmare of most survivors, as many of the weapons survivors possessed simply couldn't hurt them. There were also zombies, whose primary evolutionary path was agility. In this case, they did not acquire large and terrifying bodies. Their evolution focused on their limbs and lethal claws. The most crucial thing about these zombies was that they could use their powerful strength in their limbs and curved claws like blades to climb walls and even ceilings upside down. Their muscles were like springs, giving them incredible jumping ability and speed. Thanks to their agility and unusual posture, they could move extremely easily in the air, making them difficult targets for humans to hit. But that wasn't the scariest part. The true terror of this type of zombie was its tongue, which also mutated. Now, it could move freely, possessing enough strength to break bricks and stones, becoming a deadly weapon of attack. Jiru Shui remembered very well a survivor camp he had been in, where, in a past life, the leader of this camp was incredibly strong, but due to a lack of experience in dealing with these special zombies, he ended up being defeated. Just as they were about to defeat that zombie, he was betrayed by the creature's terrifying tongue and fell. Due to this zombie's peculiarities, the survivors nicknamed it the Tongue Devourer, mainly because of the frightening way its tongue extended and retracted. Bones grew from its spine, and with evolution, these bones eventually developed a membrane that formed a pair of bony wings, allowing it to fly. There were even extremely rare elemental zombies capable of launching elemental attacks, just like some humans who awakened abilities. However, the father zombie before me seemed completely normal. Even after undergoing a blood mutation, he did not appear to have undergone any significant changes. Thinking about this, Jiru Shui couldn't help but feel disappointed. She had hoped to see a different father today. After all, everyone wishes for their loved ones to have enough power to survive in the apocalypse. This was an extremely difficult task. Jiru Shui actually had great confidence in her zombie father. After all, it was obvious that he was very special. He still possessed human consciousness, something extremely rare in the apocalypse. Even though she had been an empress in her past life, Jiru Shui had never encountered an existence like this before. She thought to herself, "Poor zombie father, when the Empress grows up, I will protect you." Although Jiru Shui had experienced the cruelty of the apocalypse, she still upheld her own principles. To her, surviving did not mean abandoning humanity. Living rationally in the apocalypse did not mean becoming completely insensitive. Even in her past life, Jiru Shui had always been someone who repaid her debts and returned favors. Now, with her reincarnation, this was even more certain. A baby. A completely vulnerable baby. If it weren't for her strange zombie father, Jiru Shui could imagine what fate awaited her. Either she would be torn apart and devoured by a zombie, or she would slowly starve to death in a crib. It could be said that this zombie father had not only given her a second chance, but also the value of living. And Jiru Shui always repaid favors, especially when it came to something so grand. Even though her zombie father was quite ordinary, merely a low-level zombie, that did not matter. Jiru Shui had already made a decision. No matter what happened, she would protect him for life. "You took care of me when I was little. I will take care of you when you are old." These words should never be empty promises, especially not for someone like Jiru Shui, who had been reborn. She also knew many of the ways zombies evolved. Most zombies evolved primarily by devouring living beings, using the flesh and blood of others to fuel their energy. For example, zombies devoured humans or animals, and in a way, this was a biological instinct for evolution. However, there was another method, devouring the crystalline cores formed in the brains of their own kind. Zombies who awakened supernatural abilities formed a unique crystalline core in their brains, and this core was the main source of their abilities. However, only awakened zombies could possess this core in their brains. Ordinary zombies did not have it. Jiru Shui had already made up her mind. Even if her father had an ordinary constitution, who said she wasn't an empress in her past life? She had managed to carve her way through the apocalypse and rise to the rank of empress. With her experience and memory, and now with a powerful awakened ability, Jiru Shui believed her life would be faster and stronger than in her past life. In the end, when I grow up, I will steal the crystalline cores from other evolved zombies. Jiru Shui had already made her resolution. Even if she had to pile up those crystalline cores to transform her zombie father into an advanced zombie, she would do it. When he became an advanced zombie, he would undergo a great transformation. This type of zombie would already have the ability to speak and would no longer be limited to just grunting like the others. "Don't worry, Dad. I am a promising investment. I will feed you and never let you lack anything. It's delicious." I don't know what was going through the little one's mind. She just stared at me intently, and I couldn't help but smile at the sight. Her black eyes were so bright and adorable. Whether in this life or the previous one, it was the first time I had ever observed a baby so closely. Suddenly, I realized that babies somehow possess an inherent hope that draws us all in. Little one, you can grow up peacefully. Don't worry about the outside world. I've already secured 2 new guardians. They're downstairs, guarding the entrance. With them here, our life will be much safer. I sat beside the crib, calmly watching the baby. Little one, grow up quickly. Daddy brought many toys for you, Barbie dolls and stuffed bears. You don't have to worry about wasting time playing. I also brought the mock exams for the 3 years of high school. Now I truly feel like the father of this little one I happened to find. I'm raising her as if she were my biological daughter. After thinking for a while, I decided to give her a name. You will be called Kiki. Kiki, don't worry. Daddy will let you grow up without worries. Even in the apocalypse, I will give you a refuge that will be your own paradise in this world. I looked at my work from that night and nodded in satisfaction. Now the different storage spaces in this house and the empty places are filled with all the supplies I managed to gather. Even though Kiki has a good appetite, there's certainly enough food for her for a long time. After all, the little one is still just a baby. No matter how much she can eat, for now she can only drink formula. I've already prepared enough provisions. I decided to stay home for a while. In the apocalypse, the most important thing is survival. Besides, now that I've awakened the ability to control zombies, it means this world is not as simple as I thought. The blood moon that appeared last night made me feel quite uneasy. I noticed changes in my body. I can't be sure if the others, the zombies, will experience the same. No one knows what strange powers zombies might gain after evolving. I decided to stay in a safe place for a while. After all, I just reincarnated into this world and was already attacked by a zombie. After feeding Kiki milk, I stayed in the building, watching. I waited until I was sure the outside world was calm before considering going out. Either way, I've already gathered enough supplies, and I don't mind staying a few more days. This world is very strange. At every moment, surprising changes happen. If I were alone, I could simply accept this inhumane life, but now I have Kiki. I need to become stronger. I went to the living room and picked up a steel machete about 1/2 meter long. The blade was thick and straight, ideal for long cutting sessions. It was a typical blade for cutting wood. However, the old rules no longer apply in this apocalypse. After the transformation brought by the blood moon, in addition to controlling other zombies through invisible threads, my physique also improved considerably. My agility is now similar to that of a regular human. Before, my limbs were stiff, and I could only perform simple bodily movements. But now, even wielding this steel machete, I can handle it fluidly in the air. The blade shines and cuts with force. Even though I haven't trained in sword techniques, as a zombie, my physical strength is even greater than that of a regular human. Following the movements of martial arts novels and the techniques from the movies I used to watch, I started practicing strikes with the machete in the living room. The blade is extremely sharp, practically a melee combat weapon. The destructive power of this machete is far greater than that of an iron bar. I'm confident. With this machete, I'm sure I can split a zombie's head in two with a single strike. While practicing the sword techniques, Jusu began reflecting on his innate abilities in this life. Jusu has 2 very powerful innate abilities. One is time control, which can be activated whenever he has enough mental power. The other is the newly awakened ability of Jiru Shui, telekinesis control. Jiru Shui concentrated all his mental energy, directing his attention to a silver needle on the bedside table. Under the control of his mental power, the needle slowly began to float in the air, hovering over his head. It was truly an incredible sight. Although his control over objects was still a bit slow, Jusu was certain that given enough time to practice, this ability would become a powerful tool, capable of killing without being seen. And as his mental power increased, the weight of the objects he could control would also grow. Now, he was using a silver needle, but perhaps soon, he could control flying knives. 2 days passed quickly. During these 2 days, I practiced machete techniques in the living room, and Jiru practiced his levitation power in the bedroom. We lived well, each of us striving to improve the other's life. That day, after feeding Yuch-Chu milk, I suddenly noticed something moving outside. I looked down from the balcony window and saw two zombies fighting in the street. The noise of the fight was quite loud, otherwise I wouldn't have heard it from the 7th floor. Seeing this, I was confused. There was no human figure nearby. After a month living alongside these companions, I had learned a lot about them. Although zombies are insatiable and seem like emotionless killing machines, they usually don't attack each other, unless food is involved. It's rare to see zombies fighting among themselves, but there was clearly no food in dispute here. Something was not right with those two zombies. Suddenly I realized they were different. One of them was taller and muscular, while the other was smaller but much faster than a common zombie. There was no doubt that if I faced that muscular zombie, a single blow from him could break my bones. The other one had a thinner torso, but its claws looked like long blades, capable of leaving deep marks on cars. Watching the fight between these two powerful zombies from above, I felt great concern. I feared the effects of the last cycle of the blood moon. Now I see that my decision to stay home was very wise. The combat ability of these two zombies is far superior to mine. During these 2 days of practicing with a machete, I was confident that I could face common zombies and defeat them easily. But now, these two down there have given me a lesson in humility. If Jusu were here, he would undoubtedly recognize these two types of zombies. One is a tank-type zombie with a robust constitution, and the other is an agile zombie. These two types are common among evolved zombies and are also among the most problematic for survivors at the beginning of the apocalypse. Although I don't know exactly what kind of evolution they have undergone, I can affirm that both, regardless of their abilities, represent a real threat to common zombies. I feel grateful for being cautious. If I hadn't stayed home for so long, I probably would have been attacked and killed by these two zombies. Now I feel relieved by my decision. After all, if I had gone out earlier, what would have happened to me? Murdered by these two zombies. This world is much more terrifying than I had imagined. I wonder why these two zombies started fighting. Could it be that all the zombies out there are already so hungry? I don't think that's the case. This world is much more terrifying than I imagined. However, I am curious to know why these two zombie heads started fighting. Are the zombies out there so hungry? That can't be it. Zombie flesh is disgusting. I doubt one of them thinks my flesh is tasty. The sound of the battle between the two zombies below is getting louder. Some nearby cars were hit and torn apart by them. Finally, after a fierce fight, the tank-type zombie broke the agile zombie's spine. Seeing that sent shivers down my spine. But at that moment, I noticed that the tank-type zombie took something from the head of the other zombie, a white core. What is that? When I saw the white core, a strange desire arose in my heart. It seems that I really want to obtain that object. Even though I don't know what it is, I can feel that my body instinctively desires this object. It feels like if I eat this core, it will be highly beneficial for my body. Could it be that the fight between these two zombies was to compete for the core in their heads? After eating the white core, the large zombie suddenly beat his chest with his hands and roared fiercely. Some nearby common zombies, upon hearing this sound, approached, but then all began to back away. It seems they instinctively feared this robust-bodied zombie. Although I don't know what this white core is, seeing this scene makes me completely certain that it must be beneficial for the zombies. Perhaps this core can enhance the abilities acquired by zombies as they evolve. If I could eat the core of this large zombie, maybe I could control more subordinate zombies. My mental control power is still not very strong. My limit is controlling only these two zombies. If I engaged in direct combat, I wouldn't stand a chance of winning. For now, I can only rely on cunning. However, I must not act recklessly. The plan to obtain the core must be executed with caution. After all, I want to become stronger so that Kiki can grow up safely in this world. But if I make a mistake and die at the hands of the large zombie, then, if I die, little Kiki will have no one to take care of her. I can't let that happen. Meanwhile, Irui, who was lying on the bed, also heard the loud noise coming from outside. Although, due to her current body, she couldn't see what was happening downstairs. After her reincarnation, she could more or less guess what was going on. After the night of the blood moon, the entire world went through an evolutionary outbreak. Not only did humans awaken special abilities, But among the zombies, many powerful entities were also born. Even the other animals that survived the outbreak began to transform into fierce beasts. After the blood moon, zombies and fierce beasts began fighting each other to continue evolving and devouring one another. Surviving humans not only fled in terror when facing zombies, but after the red moon, they already had the ability to fight them. At the same time, humans began hunting zombies and ferocious beasts to obtain their cores, and thus investigate and develop a drug based on the extraordinary human gene so they could continue strengthening themselves. However, this extraordinary genetic enhancement drug was merely a product of the early phases after the global anomaly of the red moon. When Ui was reincarnated in her previous life, humans had already researched and used much more powerful cultivation methods. Based on these methods, humans could refine themselves and become more efficient in obtaining power to strengthen themselves. And Irui, as the supreme empress among humans in her past life, cultivated the most advanced art, the crystal breathing technique. In her past life, Irui endured a long and arduous struggle. Relying on her innate and extraordinary talent, in a sea of blood and mountains of corpses, she killed countless times to survive. Then, with this powerful cultivation technique, she step by step ascended to the rank of Empress. Now, the wave of evolution has already begun. Irui is fully aware in her heart that with her father's strength, a low-level zombie will find it nearly impossible to survive in this increasingly cruel world. She knows she must strengthen her power quickly. Irui knows that. As their flesh grew stronger, their body also became more refined, especially because Yerushu, being a baby, had very weak mental power. However, with the help of these energies and under this enhancement, her mental strength continued to increase steadily. When I returned to the room from downstairs, Yerushu was still immersed in her practice. I didn't know what she was practicing, but I saw little Kiki lying on the bed, trembling. At that moment, I felt great concern. Could she have caught a cold during the night? A baby getting sick is a huge problem. I quickly took a blanket from the side and gently covered her. In the previous world, if a baby got sick, I could take them to the hospital for treatment. But now, in this apocalypse, where are the children's hospitals? There are only bloodthirsty zombies. I felt a movement coming from her body. Yerushu was awakened from her meditation. When she opened her eyes, she saw the blanket covering her and her zombie father looking worried beside her. A small smile appeared on Yerushu's face, and a warm feeling filled her heart. In her past life, Yerushu grew up in an orphanage. From a young age, she learned to be independent and strong. She finished university thanks to scholarships and subsidies. Now, after being reborn, the parents she was born to were eliminated when the apocalypse broke out. It was the first time Yerushu felt the warmth of paternal love, even though the other was a zombie. Seeing that little Kiki was fine, I relaxed. But outside, that big zombie was still right in front of me. I needed to find a way to eliminate him. Otherwise, living near such a threat made me feel uneasy. Who knows how much stronger this guy will become? So I decided to act first. At nightfall, in the dark store ahead, occasional zombie growls could be heard. The wandering zombies instinctively moved away upon hearing the noise, as if they feared something terrifying inside the store. The large zombie I had seen before had grown even stronger compared to the day. His height, which was previously close to 2 meters, had now risen to about 2.5 meters. His shoulders had also become even broader. As this zombie continued to absorb the energy from the core, suddenly, a loud noise was heard at the store entrance. Interrupted by the noise, the large zombie immediately became filled with rage, pounded his chest with his fists, and rushed out. On the empty street, I saw a low-level zombie standing there, growling at the tank zombie. Looking closely at this low-level zombie, one could see that its red pupils were completely vacant. The tank zombie pounded his chest hard and let out an extremely loud roar. His voice was much louder than that of the low-level zombie. Even I, hiding in the shadows, couldn't help but feel a chill. Wow, this type of zombie really has a powerful presence. Fortunately, I had already prepared in advance. I controlled the low-level zombie with my mind, making it pick up a flower pot from the street and throw it hard, hitting the large zombie's head. Taking advantage of the tank zombie's delayed reaction, I controlled the zombie to turn around and run. The tank zombie roared, lifting his head, fury burning in his eyes. He immediately began chasing my controlled zombie. Zombie number 1 quickly lured this giant into a distant store, where I had already set a trap. Previously, in this place, 2 gas canisters had been left open, and the store was filled with the smell of leaked gas. The controlled zombie had just entered the store when the enormous tank zombie burst inside. Its powerful fist instantly crushed my zombie. I quickly controlled zombie number 2 to enter the store and forcibly shut the door, which had already bent. Then I took out a lighter. With the loud sound of an explosion, the tank zombie let out harrowing screams in the sea of fire. As it struggled to escape from the store, it fell head first against the door. Several minutes passed, and even though the tank zombie had been burned by the fire, it didn't move. Once I confirmed that it was truly dead, I cautiously approached. Without saying a word, I raised my blade and severed the zombie's head. The blade struck forcefully, splitting its skull in two, and I indeed found a special core inside its brain. However, this core was not the same as the one I had seen during the day. It was no longer a pure white. It now had a reddish tint. I realized that this core attracted me in an irresistible way, even more strongly than the previous time. It was possible that